Okay. What does Malaysian SNR stand for? Or whatever people call it, MSNR, Malaysian SNR, Ingles, whatever. Okay, so Malaysian SNR stands for Malaysian Support and Resistance. It's pretty simple. Now, the way we're gonna go about it is not like you heard on YouTube or whatever SNR you learned before. It's not a zone, okay, or a box or whatever. Basically, the classic support and resistance that you guys learned is a zone that bounces, price bounces from it many times. From the top, it becomes a resistance. The same from the bottom, a zone where prices rejects it many times. From the bottom, it becomes a support. If it breaks, it will act as a resistance, so on and so forth. Okay, that's not what we're going to learn about. Malaysian SNR, okay, you're going to mark that with simply one line, okay? That line is going to identify your higher time frame direction, is going to give you your entry, is going to give you everything you need. Okay, just lines. We only work with lines. That's a key level, a certain key level in price. And I'm going to show you a way on how to mark that, okay? So here, this is price action, right? Every two consecutive candlesticks forms a key level, okay? The last two ones do not form a key level if the last candlestick is still forming. Okay, you see this last candlestick right here? If it is still forming, let's say a new candlestick open, that does not count. Okay, in order for two candlesticks to form a key level, they have to both be finished forming. Okay, so in this case, we have a key level in here because this one finished forming. I'm going to show you to mark it. So every two consecutive candlesticks form a key level. Now, when you pick two random consecutive candlesticks, let's say this one, right here, right? Where should be your key level? Your key level is going to be on the closing of the first candlestick. Now we learned about the what you'll see, open, high, low, close of a candlestick. Pretty simple. I'm gonna go through that real quick. So if the candlestick is bullish, right? If the candlestick is bullish, you're gonna have the high here, the low here, the open here, and the close here, right? Candlestick is bullish. In this example, where is the first candlestick? It's right here. Is it bullish or bearish? It is bullish. Where is the closing of it? It is right here. Okay, that's the closing of this first candlestick. And simple as that. That is your key level. Now you have names for key levels since you have 5 types, okay? And this is one of them. It is called the A level. Why is it called an A level? Because when you go to the line chart, you're going to find the shape of an A. What's the use of line chart? Now, for the beginners that can't really pick the key levels, if you go to the line chart, you're going to see here curves. Okay, see curves right there. Now, what do these curves represent? Every single curve represents closing of a certain candlestick. Okay, a closing in price. Now, you're going to tell me that any curve forms a key level. That's correct. Okay, this is a key level, this is a key level, this is a key level. Okay, now even that, as you can see here, you see in the middle of this leg of price, you can see a small curve right here. Even that is a key level. Even this one is a key level. So as you can see, it's very clear now, right? There's a small curve in there. That's closing in price. Okay, but why is this one called an A level? And why is that called a V level? As I said, they give you the shape of an A level. This one gives you the shape of a V level. Now the V level is simply the opposite of this one, right? Let's take a look at an example right here. So let's take these two candlesticks. Where's the closing of the first candlestick? It's right here. You're going to draw your key level, and that is a V. Okay, that is a V. Now this one is when you have two consecutive candlesticks of the same color. Okay, I'm quite sick, man. Okay, when you have two consecutive candlesticks of the same color, the closing of the first one represents the gap, and the gap on the line chart is a small curve like this, right? So that is a gap. This is a bearish gap. Now a bullish gap is like this. Okay. Also, sometimes when you go to your broker You can see a difference, okay, maybe some bugs, whatever, if you're confused, something like this. How do you mark your key level in here? How do you mark your key level in here? Let me find the gap. That is quite confusing. Yeah. How do you mark a key level right here? It's very simple. If you follow the rule, you will never ever get confused. The closing of the first candlestick. No, that's the open, that's the close, that's the open, that's the close of the second candlestick. Your key level is right here. Is that a valid key level even though there is a gap right here? Yes, it is a valid key level. Okay. What about this one? The close of this one is higher than the open of this one. Where do you mark? You mark it on the closing. Does not matter. Okay. That is your key level. Same for this one. Open, close, open, close. Closing of the first one. Boom, right there. Open, close, open, close. Okay, closing of the first one. Same right here. Okay, same everywhere. So, yeah, do not get confused, even if you have something like this. 2 candlesticks right here. Which one do you mark? Where is your key level? Your key level is right here. If you're confused, just go to the line chart. As you can see, it is a gap. Because if you look at it from line chart perspective, you're gonna basically have a candlestick like this. As you can see, there is a small curve in there. So that's the first candle, and then the second candle, and then the third candle. Okay, that's how it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. Now, if you go to Owanda, boom, see that? 1, 2, 3. So yeah, do not get confused with price. Now, the fourth type of key level is an A level that is broken, or a V level that is broken. It's called the breakout. Okay, simple breakout key level. Now here you have, what do you have? The first candlestick, here the second candlestick, a V level, right? That is a V level. But what did price do in here? It simply went down, okay, and broke it. So once it breaks, it becomes a breakout level. So a V level that got broken. It is called an SBR, support becoming resistance, okay, in the future. And vice versa for the buys. RBS, a resistance that became a support, okay? Everything clear? Now, the fifth type of SNR key levels is the one that mostly get people confused. It's a common term that you guys heard. It is the QM. Some people call it the HNS. Some people call it the left shoulder, okay? It depends on whatever you want to call it. Now here, how do you mark your QM? A QM is simply an A level that is hidden before a bigger A level. So let's say this is an A level, okay? The first step the QM is going to go through is becoming an RBS or SBR. This is a simple A level. If it gets broken, it's going to become a support. Resistance becoming support. So we're going to expect price to do this, right? But what if price breaks it one more time? It becomes a QM. That is it. Okay, do not get confused with it. So A level, bigger A level, QM. Okay, that is a QM. Let's take a look at an example right here. So you have here an A level, a bigger A level. That is a QM. Now, as you can see, price broke it once, broke it twice, came back to it, retested it, and then went down. Now, I'm not showing you here how to take entries, right? Because some QMs are going to fail, some V levels are going to fail, some QMs are going to win, some others are going to win. No, what I showed you here is how to only mark the key levels. I didn't show you which ones are going to work, which ones are not going to work, okay? So for the fresh and unfresh concept, we're going to split it into 2 parts. The second part is when we're going to do the session about about the storyline. The first part is going to be for today. So basically, just after today's session, you can actually start taking trades, because I'm going to show you some of the entries in here. Okay, so the first part of fresh and unfresh we're going to cover today, which is this one. If a key level is touched by a wick, it is unfresh. If a key level is not touched by anything, it is fresh. If a key level is touched by a wick, then got broken again, it becomes fresh again. Okay, it is that simple. So body, fresh, wick, unfresh, and then breaks. If it breaks, the last type of price action is a body, it is fresh. Okay, it is fresh. Now, there is a certain unfresh level that we're gonna use, and you must know this level or this candlestick that makes the level unfresh. It is called the CC. What is a CC? CC stands for confirmation candle. First C is for confirmation, second C is for candle. Confirmation candle. What's a confirmation candle? It's a candlestick that rejects your level in the same direction of it, the same direction of that level. So let's say, sorry. Okay. Let's say this is a V level, right? That is a simple V level. This is fresh. If price comes down with a bearish candlestick and rejects it, that's nothing. That's simply unfresh. If price comes down, rejects it, and closes bullish, basically bullish in the same direction of the level, because the level now is acting as a support. If your level is below the current price, it will automatically act as a support. So we're going to expect a rejection and the candlestick to close bullish. So if it closes bullish, this becomes a CC. Okay, but there should be no price action after. Okay, no body, no more wicks. If there are 2 wicks, it doesn't count. Okay, there is a second way to identify a CC. Let's say the first one is bearish, right? The first one is bearish. Now, this is not a CC, right? If the next candlestick closes up bullish and does not wick it, okay, there is no wick, okay, it does not wick the level, that is also a valid CC, but it's lower quality. The best quality is a rejection the same direction. Okay, this is also a valid CC. Okay, you're gonna need this in the combos that we're gonna go and talk about right now. What are these type of combos? And what's the priority for these combos? Okay, so just to clarify things here, the C stands for classic. What is a classic? It's an A or V level that are simply fresh. What's GB? GB is simply a gap break, a gap that got broken. So you see this is a gap, right? That is a gap, got broken by this bearish candlestick, okay? This is a bearish candlestick that closed below this gap. So that is GB, gap break. Now what's BO? Breakout level. It's an A level, that's a QM. Okay, it's QM. It's simply an A level that got broken or a V level that got broken, okay? What does CC stand for? I said it, confirmation candle, okay? What does the G stand for? The G stands for gap. Someone is annotated on my chart, okay? So the G stands for the gap, okay? So when you see something like this, gap CC, okay, GCC, that means a gap has a confirmation candle on it. Now, let's take a look at an example here. So if we go to the chart, let's take a look at some examples. Okay, now as you can see, this is a gap level that got rejected, and the body of that rejection closed bearish in the same direction of that gap. Okay, that is a CC. Okay, that is a gap CC. Now for the classic CC, it's the same thing. It's an A level or V level that had one rejection, 1 wick, and closed the same direction of that level. Same thing for the buy. Right here, it doesn't have to be the candle next to it. Okay, it can be rejected from far away. Okay, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about the entries. Now, how are you going, not the entries yet, sorry. So with these combos, you're gonna use 2 time frames, and these 2 time frames are from your choice. But the higher the time frame, the better the quality, the higher the win rate, the more pips you're gonna hold. My favorite time frame for these combos is H4 and H1. Okay, so we're gonna split these in 2. Okay, I'm gonna split that in 2. And let's go. So here, what we're gonna have is this will be on the first time frame. Oh, by the way, the CC or the confirmation candle cannot be used on the first time frame that you're looking for an entry. Okay, sorry, for that you're marking the level on. So if the first time frame you're gonna use, which is H4, you can't look for a CC on H4 instantly, because the H4 you're gonna refine it down to H1. Now the H1 you can find the CC on it, but if you open H1 first, you can't find basically a CC, or you can't mark a CC on it and then refine it to M30. Okay, the CC is only on the refinement. So here, what's classic? This is called equilibrium. Okay, it's very simple. Is when you have the same level on the same area of the previous time frame, which is the same thing with this one, gap. So if you find the gap, okay, let's take a look at an example right here. If we go to H4, when you go to H4 here, you're gonna mark that A level, and then when you drop down to the H1 to refine it, you're gonna also find an A level, and they are both fresh. There is no CC. This is equilibrium. It's the same thing for the gap. Let's take a look at the gap right here. H4 gap, fresh. When you go to H1, sorry, what's that? Okay, when you go to H1, you're gonna find, okay, that H1 is a classic. So here, H4 gap, H1 classic. I'm gonna try to find an H4 gap, H1 gap. Okay. So let's just mark these, okay? So H4 gap, when you go to the H1. Okay, here we have H1 gap. So that is also an equilibrium. Okay, you got my point, guys? So that is also an equilibrium. So for these two setups, they're called equilibrium, CC. Now, I'm showing you these combos, but you can never enter from them instantly. It does not matter if you see an H4 aligning with an H1 equilibrium. That is not enough for you to take an entry. Now, in order for you to take an entry, you need confirmation. And that confirmation is not going to be on the lower time frame on M5 or M1 waiting for a certain breakout or waiting for a certain pattern to happen. It's not like you guys learned in SMC, okay? It's not close to that. So that confirmation is actually going to be on the refined time frame. So if you got the level on H4 and you refined it down to H1, your confirmation is actually going to be on H1. Also, your entry is going to be on H1. Okay, you guys get my point. Now we're gonna finish the combos and then we're gonna talk about the confirmation, wrap up our session. You guys start the week with taking trades, and then until the next session, we're gonna do storyline, which is going to increase your win rate. Okay, and you're gonna be holding trades like a crazy motherfucker. So here, the second combo is classic to gap. Okay, you're gonna find a classic, which is an A or V level. So let's say this is a V, and then if you drop down to the M30, you're gonna find it a gap. Now here, this is equilibrium, H1 and M30. So the combos, you can use all these time frames, H4 H1, H1 M30, M30 M15, M15 M5. I personally never used M15 M5, okay? I never tried it, so, but it works there, okay? I only work with H4 H1, H1 M30, M30 M15. I have a student of mine that actually uses the 2 hour in between. He uses H4 H2, H2 H1, H1 M30, M30 M15. If you guys want to try that out, it definitely works because price action is fractal. Even you use the 3 hour, it will work, okay? So if you want to add 2 hours to have more setups, you can definitely do that, but I personally don't. Okay, so M30V, let's see if there is a gap on M15, there isn't. Okay, now M15 V level, M15 V level, which is a classic. When you go to the M5, that is a gap. Okay, M15 classic to M5 gap. Okay, M15 classic to M5 gap. Now you can have a classic to a classic with CC on the lower time frame. So if you have, let's say, H4 here, that is fresh, when you go to the H1, you're going to find your H1 with CC, right? That is your CC. That is also a valid combo, okay? These are all the valid combos. Now, you can have a classic with a gap break, a classic with a gap break, something like this. Classic, you don't have many examples on it for the chart since I forget everything. So your classic, a classic to a gap break. When I say a gap break, it's not a normal gap because there are two types of gaps. There is the gap break and there is the normal gap, which is on the recent leg of price. Now, when you have the gap, the normal gap, let's say you have here H4, this is H1, you go there, wait for your confirmation, take an entry, okay? And by taking that confirmation doesn't mean you can have a late entry. I'm going to show you how to use confirmation and take it at the exact level here. So when I say a gap break and a normal gap, please understand the difference because it is very important. I'm going to repeat that for the last time. There is the difference between a gap break, which is here. You're going to have a gap that is broken on the previous leg of price, and there is a gap on the recent leg of price that can't basically be broken because there is no recent price action on top of it. So you're going to have this one. For this example, it's normal. You're going to wait for confirmation, entry. But if you have a gap break right here, if you have a gap break right here, like in this example, classic to gap break, you're going to drop one more time frame. So if you use H4, H1, you're going to drop to M30. On M30, what you're going to look at? On M30, you're going to look for a QM. It must be a QM or you're not going to take an entry. On M30, it's supposed to look like this. Okay. So, and then price comes back, and then entry. So this will be your H4. This will be your H1. This will be your M30. The only scenario or the combo that you're going to drop one more time frame than two, than just one, is when you have a gap break on H1. So you go to, sorry, not necessarily on H1, but when you have a gap break on the second refined time frame. So H4 A level, H1 gap, and then M30 QM, gap break, okay? But if it is a normal gap, do not drop to M30. You should not do that. It's not about you don't have to. You should not do that. If you have a normal gap or classic CC or CC, whatever, do not drop one more time frame, okay? So hope I cleared that out. If you have questions about it, please feel free to leave your questions in the chat. So classic to breakout. So classic to breakout is something like this. You have your H4. Okay, you have your H4. What the fuck is that? Okay, so you have your H4. And then on H1, you're gonna find something like this. Okay, so that's one, and that is your gap. Sorry, that is your BO. Okay, A level breakout. That's also a valid setup. Can a gap that's not respected a couple times become a QM? What do you mean by that? Because a gap is not a QM. How can it come a QM? Do you mean by your question on another time frame? So here, the next combo is classic to gap CC. Okay, it's simply classic A level, A or B level, and then you're gonna find the gap with the CC. I'm not gonna draw that just to waste time. Okay, so here you have a gap and then a classic. Just like this example right here, we have a gap level, and then when you go to the H1, it is a classic. It's an A level, right? So that is also valid. Okay, that is also valid. So you have gap to gap. Okay, for the gap to gap, which we talked about for the equilibrium, there is a special case for this. if you have a gap to gap on H4, for example, if you have a gap to gap, and that's your key level, right? That is your key level. But just above it, there is a CC on the refined time frame, H1. This is H4, okay? So price is not going to respect your gap to gap because gap to gap is the lowest quality setup, but yet strong, okay? It is strong. When is it strong? When it is the only setup that is available. But if you have a CC on the refined time frame, I'm going to repeat, on the refined time frame, not on the original time frame, price is not going to respect this level. It's going to the CC and then go down. So prioritize the CC when you have a double gap on both time frames, okay? And then finally you have the gap to gap CC and then gap to classic CC. Gap to classic CC, simply like this one, H1, you have a classic, and then price wicks it. So if it wicks it, closes the same direction, that is a valid one. Okay, let me just read the question. Can a gap that's not respected a couple times become a QM? Yes, on another time frame. So what I explained here on the combos is that price must be fresh, never touched, or only rejected one time on both time frames. On the refined time frame, you can use the CC or fresh. On the original time frame, it must be fresh only. So if you're telling me that it got wicked so many times and it can become a QM, it can only become a QM if it gets broken 2 more times on that time frame that you're going to find the QM on. So if your gap break is on H1, if you go on M30 and you find the gap is fresh, or the gap or the QM fresh, or the QM has a CC, then you can definitely use it, okay? But if it is not respected a couple times before in the previous price action and it's still fresh, it does not matter, okay? Just stick to the combos. Now, what is the confirmation? That is simple yet very fucking powerful, okay? With this, you can take entries with the storyline, against the storyline, whatever, okay? For now, I'm not going to show you how to put your take profit because that is on the next session or storyline because we're running out of time. But the minimum TP is going to be around 60, 50, and your average is going to be 100, 120, and the maximum is going to be a next daily level. And then the next daily level can be 300 pips, 400 pips, 500 pips, even 1,000 pips away from you. So what is the confirmation? So if you mark your level on H4, this is a level. It doesn't have to be a certain combo because all the combos, we're going to use that. H4, H1. Okay, literally some fucking mentors take 5 fucking sessions to teach you all of this. Okay, and I'm here doing that. So H4, fresh. H1, fresh, right? Your confirmation is on the refined time frame. If you want to sell, okay, if you want to sell, you're going to wait for price on H or refined time frame to reject bullish, okay? Reject as a bullish candle, not a bearish candle. If it rejects as a bearish candle, it's another scenario we're going to talk about. It rarely happens on the next session. But if it rejects bullish, right when it rejects bullish, you're going to put your limit on that level, even though it got touched right here. Now, if that level has a CC, gap, whatever type of combo, it does not matter, okay? You're going to put your limit here because price is going to come back and boom, okay? Go down. Now, I'm going to show you some examples. A V level on H1, an H1 on H4, an H1, a V level also that is equilibrium classic to classic. What does price do here? Price tends to reject it as bearish. Now that's for buys, okay? For buys, it does reject it bearishly. For sells, it rejects it bullishly. And as you can see here, price rejected the classic to classic with a bearish candlestick. Right after it did, you're gonna put your limit on the level. As you can see here, price came back exactly there. Stop loss is at 30 pips. Take profit, whatever, okay? I'm gonna talk about TP in the next session. So that is your confirmation, as simple as that. So if you use the level on H1, okay, if you use the level on H1, let's say this one, for example, you're gonna go to the M30 and wait for price to reject bullishly. Now, as you can see, price here rejected bearishly. Okay, rejected bearishly. So when it rejects bearishly, it is a very low chance that price does come back and then go down. Okay, but here you have the bullish rejection, price comes back, you take a sell, but we don't like messy stuff. Okay, we're gonna take only clean setups. Now let's take a look at some other examples. Okay, so here that is on H1. Okay, this H1 gap right here. I shared this with my Telegram. Sorry, my Telegram public. No, not that. I shared it on my Instagram. Let me just take a quick look here. I have to go to my archive. Anyways, I shared this signal. Okay, so you go to the H1, you're finding down to the M30, H1 gap, M30 gap. Okay, M30 gap. Now, when you have M30 gap, what do you do below it? What's there? There is an M30 what? CC. And that's the level you should take. Okay, that is the level you should take. But let's say the rejection did not happen here. The rejection is supposed to happen on the actual original level. So I'm going to repeat that because this is very important. H1 gap, M30 gap. The entry is supposed to be here, but the rejection is not supposed to be here. It's supposed to be on the level. Okay, so rejection here. Once you have that rejection, you put your order on the CC. Okay, but let's say you didn't. Okay, let's say there is no CC here. Simple rejection. Price comes back and then goes up. Okay, guys. Simple yet very fucking powerful. Yeah. So I think let's take a look at this one. So here you have H4. You go to the H1. What did H1 do? What's the combo? H4 classic, H1 gap, CC. H1 gap, CC. Okay. Price did what? Reject in a bullish candlestick. You go and put your limit for the sell. 30 pip stop. And boom, price goes. I literally don't know the examples that I'm taking. I don't even know these. It's just random examples, and you can literally see the confirmation every fucking where. Okay, but yeah, it is as simple as that. There is another way of taking a look at entries. There is storyline. There are a lot more stuff we're gonna cover in the next session, guys. Okay, but with just this, you can pass prop firms, flip accounts, do whatever you fucking want, okay? Just wait for what's coming in the next session, especially for the previous students. I did not teach everything yet, okay? So stay tuned, guys. I hope you guys had a great session. You guys did not ask me any question. I guess I'm that good of a teacher. But yeah, if you are in a storyline and price rejects, okay, so I'm not going to answer any storyline questions, okay? I'm going to answer storyline questions in the next session. I'm just going to keep that for later. But if you know storyline, and the others don't, you can ask me that on Telegram private. I'm going to answer your question. Okay. Tomorrow we'll be in Blue Pips. Yeah. Obviously. Yeah, I'm going to stop recording.